In today's video, we are going to address and tackle the subject in question: is narcissism a human evil? There are so many tragic current events going on in the world that I think this is a relevant question worth exploring. From the Ruby Franke case to the Sean Combs case to the wars going on in different parts of the world, to so many tragic and traumatic events that I've lived through in my personal life. And I know so many of you have endured very similar traumatic experiences because of these disordered people. The first time this specific topic was brought to my attention is when I was going through my last custody trial and the severe alienation of my only child. I was able to hire some of the very best parental alienation subspecialists to work on my case, and they were instrumental in helping me understand how my child had gone from this loving, empathetic, beautiful human being who I had an extremely close and loving relationship with to someone I no longer recognized. And it happened extremely fast. I had no idea that parental alienation was even a thing, and I certainly never thought that my close and loving relationship with my child would have been vulnerable to such evil. And for those of you who have lived through the extremes of narcissistic and abuse and parental alienation, you know why I'm calling this an evil. There simply is not any other word to accurately describe the disgusting and heinous acts that these people are capable of perpetrating on a child and another human being. Personally, I do believe this is evil, and I'm going to tell you why I believe that. One of the books that caught my attention during my last custody trial was a book titled People of the Lie by M Scott Peck. The author was a very accomplished psychotherapist and psychiatrist, and in his book he asks the question, is there such a thing as human evil? And if the answer is yes, how would mental health care professionals go about diagnosing someone as evil, and what specifically would be the diagnostic indicators if this were a literal diagnosis in the DSM? And I'm going to explain his findings in just a bit. Another resource that parental alienation subspecialist Dr. Michael Bone, who helped me so much, suggested for me to watch was a lecture given by Dr. Philip Zimbardo. The title of the lecture is The Psychology of Human Evil. And after I watched that lecture, I finally understood how this happened to my son. Now, I want to give an enormous trigger warning. If you decide to look up this lecture, you must know there are extremely disturbing and graphic images included in this lecture. So please view with extreme caution. I would feel terrible if any of my followers watched that lecture and were horribly traumatized by it. So viewer discretion is advised. Please take your mental health into consideration before watching this lecture. So going back to M Scott Peck's book, People of the Lie, which I recommend everyone read if you are a survivor of extreme narcissistic abuse or parental alienation, because he gives you an in-depth understanding to how these people think and why they do the things they do. If you don't want me to spoil the book for you because you want to read it first, please stop the video now because I am going to go into some of the specifics. In People of the Lie, M. Scott Peck references many of his patients that he treated throughout his, very long and established career. And he explains how many of these people demonstrated what he defined as evil. So in the conclusion of his book, he determines there is such a thing as human evil and that it is malignant narcissism. And then he further goes into exactly what the diagnostic criteria is in order to diagnose someone with human evil. And if you are a survivor of extreme narcissistic abuse or parental alienation, his diagnostic criteria is going to blow your mind, because all extreme narcissistic abusers and obsessed parental alienators will be malignant narcissists, in my opinion, which is obviously the highest on the spectrum. So now let me explain what the diagnostic criteria is to diagnose someone with evil based on M Scott Peck's book, People of the Lie. He explains that human evil should be identified and diagnosed by the following 10 characteristics and traits. Number 1, consistently self-deceiving with the intent of avoiding guilt and maintaining a self-image of perfection. Number 2, deceives others as a consequence of their own self-deception. Number 3, projects his or her evils and sins onto very specific targets while being apparently normal with everyone else. Number 4, commonly hates with the pretense of love for the purposes of self-deception as much as deception of others. Number 5, abuses political and emotional power, the imposition of one's will upon others by overt or covert coercion. Number 6, maintains a high level of respectability and lies incessantly in order to do so. Number 7, is consistent in his or her sins. Evil people are characterized not so much by the magnitude of their sins, but by their consistency of destructiveness. Number 8, is unable to think from the viewpoint of the victim, meaning no capacity to empathize with the trauma they cause their victims. Number 9, has a covert intolerance to criticism and other forms of narcissistic injury. Number 10, most evil people realize the evil deep within themselves, but are unable to tolerate the pain of introspection or admit to themselves that they are evil. Thus, they consistently run away from their evil by putting themselves into a position of moral superiority and putting the focus of evil on others. These are the 10 characteristics to determine if a human being is evil by M Scott Peck's standards. And I know for those of you out there who have been abused for years by a malignant narcissist, your mouth is likely hanging open in disbelief because of how accurately that describes the behavior that you have been subjected to for years and years. I know reading those 10 diagnostic indicators blew my mind. Like I felt like I was in shock for a few days. But it was also such a relief in some weird way and so validating. Finally, I understood who and what I had been dealing with for my entire life. And I hope for those of you who have been harmed by someone like this, it gives you some validation and relief as well. Even though I know this reality is horrifying, I do believe that healing is dependent on understanding what we have lived through and what exactly we have been dealing with. And I hope this video gives you that understanding and can be a piece of your healing journey. All right, that's going to do it for today's video. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up and please subscribe to my channel. Also, follow me on my other social media platforms. The links are in the description below. Thanks for watching, everybody.